almost ready. First round of fireballs on me.
You called?
Who are you?
I'm the Fireball Dragon, and I'm here to grant you 3 wishes.
Really?
Hell no! I'm here to torch your tonsils and make tonight a night to remember.
What is even going on right now?
You're in a radio commercial.
Wait, I'm in a commercial?
Ignite the night with Fireball.
What is going on here?
Please drink responsibly. Whiskey with natural cinnamon flavor, 33% alcohol by volume, produced by Cesar Co., Louisville, Kentucky.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V20 6-tool Power Tool Combo Kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Stop by your nearest Lowe's store and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Hey, we're Brother Low. Welcome to Lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you, as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Greg Waddell. He does such great work over at Sleepers Media, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. We're going to be chatting with him about the amazing NBA draft decisions that we've seen over the last few days. We're going to be chatting with him about some of the winners and losers of that process. Additionally, we're going to be taking a look at just sort of the inroads that Michigan might be able to make in the Big Ten, as our good friend Greg, he is based out there in the great state of Michigan. So we're going to be diving in on that front. A lot of just reaction to what we saw in terms of those draft decisions of the last few days. And then in the final segment, I'm going to give you guys a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball on Thursday. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, name does not matter. So, per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost, they're making sure that bettors are able to access their funds 24/7, 365 on all gambling-related transactions. When you go to edgeboost.bet, you're able to earn cashback rewards as you utilize EdgeBoost. And if you utilize the promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G, you're going to be getting a $1 match on your first deposit of up to $25. Now let's talk with Greg Waddell. Does such great work over at Sleepers Media. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at GWizzy, the number 12. And Greg, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And I'm so glad that we get to go out to your home state of Michigan, because we saw a massive NBA draft decision over the last 72 or so hours, with Yaxel Lendeborg deciding that he is going to be going back to Michigan. And just how meaningful is this for a Wolverines team that we know? Last year, they were built around the Twin Towers down low. They were able to do a nice job of being able to own the glass, and feels like they're going to be able to do that once again this year.
Yeah, it's everything. I think Dusty May did a really good job addressing things that last year's team struggled with, to say the least. They immediately went out and got a really good facilitator in Elliot Cadeau. You may have questions about other parts of his game, but last year they were lacking a true point guard at the guard spot, and I think they wanted to fix that. I think even with the Twin Towers, with Wolf and Golden, they were not the best rebounding team. Merez Johnson addresses that immediately. They didn't have great rim protection with Vlad Golden. They immediately got a Daymara, but even with all of these upside shots that they had added quickly, they were kind of missing the proven superstar. And it was a gamble. It was a bet from Dusty May. There was certainly risk involved here, but from the beginning of the offseason, Dusty's been seemingly the only person involved that has been 100% confident that Yaxel Lendeborg would end up playing in Ann Arbor. It was a bet that paid off, and it's a bet that is going to make Michigan extremely nationally relevant next season.
And I think that's so big for Michigan as well, with what we've seen this offseason, that I just feel like they're going to be a much more efficient offense, because with Michigan, they had all the goods last year, but they kept turning the ball over left and right. And you mentioned they bring in Elliot Cadeau, who was over at UNC. I think he's a real difference maker, a guy that's able to be sure-handed with the ball, albeit not necessarily the scorer of the guys that were doing the ball handling last season, but just being able to have that steady hand, I think, is massive too.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about Cadeau. He certainly has his deficiencies and his detractors publicly. I've been one of them throughout his career, but the reality is this kid is one of the best pure point guards in the country. And we've seen him be the floor general as an 18-year-old reclassifying freshman on a 1 seed with North Carolina, with Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan. It's going to depend on the pieces around him. I still don't think we're ever going to see a world where Elliot Cadeau is, the best player on a very, very good team. But now that Yaxel's in the fold, Michigan doesn't need him to be that. They just need him to do what he does well. Table set, push and transition. Hopefully you see Merez Johnson run the floor more than he did at Illinois. I think Namari Burnett and Roddy Gale back for Michigan too is huge. I mean, those aren't the sexiest names, but they're starters from a team that won the Big Ten tournament, finished second in the Big Ten, and made a Sweet 16. They've won a lot of games in this conference, and I think you see the full vision come together. Without Yaxel Lenneborg in the fold, it was hard to fully understand what Dusty May was trying to do. Now it's like you found the final puzzle piece, and suddenly it looks like one of the best teams in the country.
No question about it. That was one of the biggest draft decisions that we saw out there in the Big Ten, where it feels like it's Purdue and everyone else. Michigan has a chance to be able to step up, be a top 2, top 3 team. As joining me on the show, we've got Greg Waddell, who does such great work over at Sleepers Media, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And no doubt that was one of the biggest draft decisions, but I view this one as being so pivotal as well. The fact that you do have Mailu Suzan returning to Houston. I felt like Houston thought he was as good as gone, so much more that they decided to bring in Pop Isaacs, who's now going to be over at Texas A&M. But I thought that was another massive one, because I feel like we both have seen what Houston does when they've got a steady hand at point guard as well. And getting Uzan back, who really was able to play his best basketball towards back half of the season, I think is everything for Houston.
Yeah, I've said for years the two most valuable things in college basketball in the NIL era are NBA players who decide to stay an extra year in college. That's Yaxel Lenneborg. And then also year 2 transfers, guys that get familiar, get comfortable with the system, with a new coaching staff, and come back for a second year, have that extra year of eligibility and make them pay. Milos Uzan is both of those. He could be in the NBA right now, chose to be at Houston, and Kelvin Sampson's going to reap the benefits of this.
Yep, no question about it with Houston. I look at them as being one of those top teams in all of college basketball, because with it being Houston, Purdue, and also Florida, I think needs to enter in the conversation as well. With Purdue, they really didn't have any NBA draft decisions, so no doubt about it, they were going to be set regardless. But I thought that this was a really big week for both Houston and Florida, and especially Florida, with them getting back all their big men and then adding Boogie Flann into the mix as well.
Yeah, I love what Florida's been able to do as well. I mean, Boogie Flann and Xavier Lee, 2 of the top 5 guards in the entire portal cycle. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the 3 big men. I mean, I'm not fully sold that playing Thomas Haw at the 3 is what's best for him individually or even for this team. But again, you can just see what Todd Golden is going for. Boogie Flann and Xavier Lee are 2 of the best off the dribble shot creators in the sport. They really rely on taking a lot of tough shots. And I don't want to compare it to Buzz Williams, because I think there's more upside here than what Texas A&M's been the last couple of years. But if they're going to ask Lee and Flann to just sort of take a bunch of shots that are tough for 40 minutes, they've got 3 of the best rebounders in the country at 3, 4, and 5 that can almost turn missed shots into good offense. So it'll be fascinating to see how much they go the triple big look. It kind of reminds me of what Alabama wanted to do last year. And I would argue it didn't work for Nate Oates playing Jaren Stevenson at the 3. So, I'm a little curious what the bench looks like for Florida. They've got some good freshmen, some good pieces. And it sounds like they might not be done, to be honest, if you listen to people inside the program. So we'll have to keep an eye on the Gators, but certainly a top 5 team in the country.
Always have to keep your eye on the Gators, because they've done such a great job ever since Todd Golden has gotten in there of just being able to add talent, of just being able to make sure that they get the most out of this roster as well. And I do think that they're going to be worth watching, but so is Kentucky, because with Kentucky, I think they agree with me. The guard play last year was supreme with them, but the low post play wasn't so great. They bring in Jaden Quantens in the offseason, one of the best forward/shot blockers in the transfer portal, but they get back Ortega Owe as well. And it just feels like this is a Kentucky team that, even with Kobe Brea moving on and being such a sharpshooter like he was a season ago, that this team has a chance to be able to take some strides forward and just be a little bit more complete than they were in season number 1 under Mark Pope.
Yeah, I think, anytime you've got a second-year coach, it's kind of similar to what we just talked through with Michigan. Like, you're looking for what is the next step. You had a good first season. Everybody believes in your ability to coach and is now going to give you basically full reign. Like, Kentucky BBN is fully bought in that Mark Pope is the guy after how many top 10 games they won last season. And If you believe the reports out of Kentucky, this might be the most expensive portal class. I guess the biggest budget that any program spent this offseason. And I think getting Otega-Oweh back was critical because had Otega-Oweh left, we're kind of looking around at other decisions. There wouldn't have been too many options left to try and replace a leading scorer type like that on the wing. Otega is critical. He is going to be a first-team All-SEC player. I think, at times he was Kentucky's best player overall last season. And I'll be honest, I don't love the other pieces as much, but they certainly make more sense. It's very similar to Michigan where, with the star in the fold, you start talking yourself into some of those guys that you had question marks with. That's going to be me with Kentucky, with Quaintance down low, who was very good, but very young and coming off a big injury. And then, Denzel Aberdeen, a guy that I don't know was ever going to be a 30-minute-a-game guy at Florida. And we'll see what Mark Pope wants his role to be. But Mark Pope can take basically anybody and turn them into good offensive players. He's got lots of options for him to work his magic with now.
No question about it. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get out there in the SEC in general, as they were some of the biggest winners, in my opinion, with these NBA draft decisions. As joining me on the show, we've got Greg Waddell, who does such great work over at Sleepers Media, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I feel like we're always left saying this, at the very least we have been over the last 3 or 4 off season. It just felt like there were many more winners than losers in this process. The guys that used to be like the late first, early second round picks, they've been staying much more in college basketball. And I felt like that was the way this year as well. And even a little bit further, someone like Todd Pettiford, even a season or two ago, I felt like he would have been as good as gone. Him returning to Auburn, I think, speaks to just the amount of money that's in college basketball right now and how much these guys want to stay.
Yeah, Pettiford would have been picked. I mean, potentially in the first round after what he did at the Combine. He looked like one of the best guards at the entire event. But yeah, I think this is what we wanted NIL to serve as, right? When it became clear that this is where the sport was headed and players were going to get paid, I think we all hoped that it could keep more talent in our sport. And between guys that are withdrawing from the NBA draft that would have been, fringe draft picks, and between the influx of talent from the international levels, we're seeing a more talented version of this sport already. I still think, it's evolving and it could be in a very different place 5 years from now. But there are some guys that played this wrong. And I agree with you, a lot of teams won the deadline. There's some players still looking for homes. Des Claude comes to mind. There's a player in PJ Haggerty who I think pretty clearly left a better situation for him, for a worse situation. And, depending on who's advising these kids and just how they're wired, you're not always going to have great decisions be made and great situations for their career evolve. But I think overwhelmingly, at least in Pettiford's example and Yaxel Lendeberg's another good example, it's good to see players that will eventually get to the NBA say they don't need to rush it. I mean, in the past 10 years ago, if you had a chance to be a first round pick, it was wise to go. It no longer is. I mean, even a guy like Danny Wolf, who at Michigan last year was, I think, really able to help his stock from what he was at Yale. Now he might go in the top 20. I think the hope is both Pettiford and Yaxel Lendeberg could have a great season in college, make money while doing it, and come back next year and potentially be an NBA lottery pick.
Yep, I totally agree with you. It's really nice to see. And with regards to what we're going to be getting in college basketball for this upcoming season as well, we've got a lot of teams that are going to be completely locked and loaded. And that does lead me to this as well. How much do you think that teams were just very much inclined on getting their guys early on in the process? Because you mentioned it with PJ Haggerty, the fact that it felt like because he was looking at all of his options, he was going through the NBA draft process, he left a little bit of money out there on the table. And as we both know, last offseason, some of the highest paid guys were the likes of Coleman Hawkins, Great Osibor, that waited late. That's not been the case this offseason.
I think timing is everything, and I think teams are getting better at this, quite frankly. I think a year ago, if you had a player that was telling you he was worth $2 million, either you had the money for it or you didn't. I think this offseason we saw a lot more of teams deciding whether they wanted to spend that money, even if they had that money. And I think pretty clearly PJ Haggerty was getting advised to do the wrong thing. It's a bummer. I think he can still be very good at Kansas State. But, Des Claude, the other one I mentioned, is another one. I think RJ Lewis, probably a guy that should have come back. And all of these guys had varying degrees of sort of, I'm not all that serious about this. Put your offer on the table and we'll decide from there. And I think the players that were, I don't know, willing to engage with teams and just show a level of seriousness about potentially playing college basketball are the ones that did receive those big deals early. And as I mentioned, I think teams, coaches are getting a lot better at sniffing this out and choosing what the right direction is for their program.
Yep, no question about it. And I do think that's going to be a fun landscape to take a look at for this upcoming college basketball season. I mentioned it. Feels like there's way more winners than losers in college basketball, but is there a team or two that you felt what might have been a little bit of a loser here over the last week or two? Because the one that really comes to mind for me is Duke. The fact that Cedric Howard just absolutely skyrocketed up NBA draft boards. Looks like he's going to be a first-round pick. They were thinking that he was going to be going there. That's one that comes to mind, but are there any other teams that you thought maybe they were going to be able to get a guy, / maybe they were going to be in the mix for someone in the transfer portal that they just were not able to get that?
Yeah, I think Duke's a good one. I think Kansas is another shout. But ironically enough, two guys that were involved in the Dame Sarr saga here. I don't really understand what's happened with Kansas, to be honest with you. I mean, they went from the biggest bag-dropping portal school in the sport to seemingly where'd the money go? And I don't know, there's some rumors that football is taking more share of the money at Kansas suddenly, which just doesn't seem like it should be happening as long as Bill Self is there. So I don't know. They might not be done yet. Bill Self might still have more tricks up his sleeve, but they are missing a star-level player on the wing. And I agree with you. Cedric Howard was the best-case scenario for Duke. I think they're probably bummed that they had to go to their backup plan, but as far as backup plans go, Dame Sarr is a pretty damn good one. So those would be my two that jump out. You could throw Arkansas in the mix just with the news that Adute Thiero decided to stay in the draft. They got Carter Knox back, but I don't know. Thiero is a guy kind of right in that realm of all the other names we mentioned where he could have gotten a nice paycheck to come back and be a star for John Calipari. And with all his young talent coming in, maybe that's part of why he decided to stick it out in the draft. For me, if I were an Arkansas fan, I would be bummed and feel like there's a missed opportunity that Thiero did not decide to come back.
Yep, the good news for Arkansas is that they are going to be getting Knox back in the fold, so they were able to get one of those two guys, but certainly that's a bit of an issue, and obviously Boogie Flan, he did come back to school, but did not come back to them as well, so there was a lot that happened over the last week or so, and I know you and everyone else over there at Sleepers Media, Greg, are doing such an amazing job covering this great sport that we all know and love of college basketball. I know you've got a lot of NBA draft decision recap and so much more, and I know you guys are turning forward to what we're going to be getting from these rosters out there on the court during the 2025-26 season, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Sleepers Media is where you can find us, our YouTube channel every single day. We're putting up reactionary videos to all of this stuff. We're working on NBA draft scouting reports for the top 80 players on our big board, leading up to an NBA draft live show the night of the NBA draft in the summer. So stay tuned for that. And as always, Greg, thanks for having me.
Oh, yes. Greg doing such excellent work over at Sleepers Media. Take a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. And every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Greg for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming in next, it is that time of the podcast. I recap the news and notes of college basketball from the last 24 hours.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Everybody, good lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by our good friend Greg Waddell, who does such great work over at Sleepers Media. Every single time he joins me, he lends such amazing insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Greg for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. One NBA draft decision that I did not hit yesterday that happened very late, and I did not cover this because I thought that he was as good as gone, but You saw LeBaron Philin decide that he is going to be heading on back to Alabama, a guy that was able to put up 10.5 points, 3.8 assists per contest. Wasn't the world's greatest three-point shooter, but I thought that Philon was going to be staying in the NBA draft. I thought that this was one that was not worth recapping. He is going to be heading on over to Alabama, and this is a massive get for an Alabama team that, they're going to be without Mark Sears from season ago. This isn't going to be quite that same backcourt that we saw during the 2024-25 season, but the fact that they are now getting Philon back in the fold, that is going to be very big for them. Aiden Holloway, he's back from a season ago as well. The team still has quite a bit of size with Taylor Bulbowen coming into the program as well. So this was absolutely massive, very unexpected. Jaleel Bethea, who was a very highly touted prospect, but just didn't do anything over at Miami last season. So a credit to them and credit to the fact that they did not give up on this one. So big kudos there. You've got Kezigifa, who was over at High Point last season. He's hoping to not be a low point over at USC. He's going to be becoming a Trojan. Was very rock solid last season. 2.5 boards, 2.5 assists, right around about 14.5 points per game. Last 2 seasons when he was over at High Point, was able to put up some solid numbers. Now, over at USC, there's going to be a lot of competition. Rodney Rice, obviously, is a guy that was able to pop off for Maryland, have himself a big year. And for Giffa, it's not like he's an amazing three-point shooter. He shot over the last 2 seasons in that neighborhood about 32.5% from 3 if you combine the 2 years combined. But for USC, the rich just get richer because you've got Chad Baker-Mazara in the mix for this team. You've got a lot of size down low. Jacob Kofi, Ezra Uzar, who have some good versatility, and Jerry Easter. He's going to be a really good freshman guard for the team, but this provides them a little bit more, shall we say, assurance, and I do think that he's going to be able to find a little bit of a role here for USC. Is he going to be some sort of starter? I don't think so, but I think that he's going to be able to add depth for a team that they're looking all of a sudden very, very deep right now. Tim Moore Jr., he's going to be able to look to give more over at San Diego. He last season was able to, for NJIT, provide a block and a half per contest, 6.5 boards, 13 points per game, and I think that he's going to be able to have a nice impact. Now, NJIT was one of the most sorry teams in all of college basketball last season, but it wasn't because of Tim Moore Jr. He was one of the few lone good surprises for the team, and he's got a little bit of versatility to be able to pop it. Shot 36.5% from three-point range. For San Diego, after they just completely neglected the transfer portal last offseason, the fact that they've made the moves that they have here in this offseason, I think is very big for a San Diego team that, frankly, they needed. Like the Steve Liven era has not been great, to say the least. Here, number one, brought in a lot of guys in the portal. Things did not really pan out in the last few offseasons. Ever since then, they have been very stagnant up until now. Now bringing in a double-figure scorer from Southern Utah in Dominique Ford is big. Juan Sebastian Gorecito, who at 6'1", is able to dole it out, shoot it a bit from 3 is big. Tunari Lane, double-figure score over at Georgia State. Like, this team has done a really good job of revamping this backcourt. Now they add in there Moore Jr. It's not going to be giving you like the world's greatest size over at 6'6", but he's a pretty rock-solid defender. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to help haul in some boards for the team, and all of a sudden San Diego looking a little bit better out there in the WCC. So I do love this one, and I do like this. The fact that Ryan Cornish, he is going to be getting another year of eligibility. He's going to be back at Dartmouth, was able to average 17 points, 5 boards, shot it well from three-point range for Dartmouth. They were really able to have a nice season last year, one of the best seasons that they've had in quite some time. As for Dartmouth, I mean, let's call it what it is. It's been a little bit rough for them, and for Dartmouth, they are a program that they're going to lose a lot more from the transfer portal rather than what they're going to be able to get in, because Ivy League schools, they just don't get a lot of anything in via the transfer portal because the barriers for entry, the high academic standards at this program are just insane. But they're going to have Brandon Mitchell-Day, a 6'8" combo player back. Connor Edmondson, he should be back in the fold as well. So they've got a nice core to be able to build around. Do I think that they're going to win the Ivy League over schools like Princeton and Yale? No, but all of a sudden I think that they can compete for a top 4 spot. I think that they have a lot of upside. This is a upside move. Southern Indiana, they're going to be bringing in Ahmad Bynum. I really liked him over at Utah this last season. He shot north of 50% from three-point range in non-conference play. Overall for the season, shot 44% from 3. 10.5 points, a little bit over an assist, 1.7 rebounds per game. Now on a Utah just style in general that yields to generating a lot of turnovers. Wasn't quite that for his team. He was giving you just under a steal per contest, but still, he's going to help out a Southern Indiana team that they weren't great with regards to their defense. They were well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so you're getting a clear upgrade there. It's a Southern Indiana team that they were very much built around being able to pop it from three-point range last season, and with losing quite a few of those pieces, being able to bring in a guy like a Bynum is very big, and they're going to be bringing in Trey Thomas, a double-figure scorer who's over at Bethune-Cookman this last season. Ben Izigu, he was a 6'7" guy that was over at Appalachian State. He should be able to provide something down low. Shadron Sharp from Southern Illinois. This team is going to have a really good backcourt. Now, what they're going to be able to get down low is a little bit of a question mark, but man, being able to add in there a guy like Bynum, they're going to be a very fearsome backcourt out there in the Ohio Valley Conference, and this team is looking to muscle up a little bit more as well. As you've got Daniel Toboloba, hopefully I said that correct. He was over at South Florida this last season. He has decided that he's going to be going to UC Irvine. 7-footer that just really didn't see a lot of playing time over the last few seasons. We're going to call it what it is, but for UC Riverside, they are very much in transition after losing such a great coach in Mike Magpio, but this is a good way to be able to help replace all that, and for UC Riverside, it does seem like they're going to be looking to build themselves up down in the post, as every single one of the transfers that they have coming in, aside from McKeel Worthy, a guard from UMass, 6'7" or taller, or Reeses Grady coming over from Utah Valley, Denzel Hines, guys like this, they're going to be very much looking to be able to rebuild, I guess you call it, this portion of their game, and they're going to need to get some backcourt help. Like, this team has not addressed any sort of the guard play whatsoever, so that's going to be a little bit of an issue, but you know what, this is more size for the team, and it's very clear the identity that they're looking to build, and you've got Nick Woodyard. He last season was over at Stony Brook. He has decided that he is going to be going to Alcorn State. Rock solid ad for Alcorn State. He was able to average 5 points per contest. Now, for Stony Brook, it was not a great season for them. They were well outside the top 300 in terms of their overall metrics, but he was able to give the team some relatively solid minutes. Not a guy that's going to light you up from three-point range. Shot less than 25% from three-point range at 6'6", but for Alcorn State, it's a program that they needed a little bit of a W. They're going to be able to get it here, and for Alcorn State, and really all these teams out there in the SWAC, the SWAC teams, they very much are getting the leftovers in the transfer portal, to call it what it is, just because they don't have the NIL dollars to be able to spend, unlike a lot of these other programs, but they do a nice job of being able to mix and match. Like, I still remember Bethune-Cookman last offseason, the way that they were able to just put together a nice roster on the fly. They were able to do a tremendous job there. And for Alcorn State, they've already been able to add a few other guys as well. You're going to have Travis Roberts coming on over from Marist. That's pretty solid. Zaxby Sutherland, he was over at Chicago State, and I recognize Chicago State wasn't great, but Sutherland, he was able to give them some versatility, some production. So I do like the roster that Alcorn State is putting together. And then Nate Deere, he was over at Texas State this last season, averaged about 2 points per contest. He's going to be adding on over to Oakland. Now for Oakland, they're in a Horizon League that I feel like they have really fallen on tougher times than darn near any other conference in all of college basketball. They and the MAC have really been the losers of the NIL era, because these were two really good mid-major conferences, and they just have not been able to adapt with the times. For Oakland, it's going to be interesting to see what you're going to be able to get out of them this upcoming season, because they had much more of a defensive identity last season, and for Oakland, they've been able to add a few guys via the transfer portal. You've also got Michael Hoagie, who I thought that was a really good ad from Jacksonville State. He's a guy that's able to give you 8+ rebounds per game. Brody Robinson is a nice guard. Deere, I just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him. At 6'9" guy that should be able to help out a little bit down low, but regardless, a good ad for Oakland. And what else is good is being able to look at this game of college basketball every single day. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And big thanks once again to Greg Waddell of Sleepers Media for joining me in the last segment, and to have you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.